If there's one thing the internet era has shone a light on most of all, it's the fake news media. Their lies and manipulations are now obvious for anyone willing to see. These days, they aren't even hiding their agenda. It's as though they are proud of their own lies. Recently, a group of honest, working-class Australians stood up to government and media corruption at St Kilda Beach in Melbourne. The reaction from the fake news media was off the charts. It truly was a sight to behold, and it started even before the rally took place. It would take far too long to go over every piece of defamation and dishonesty, so I've decided to condense the worst offenders for this brief presentation. You'll be happy to know that all our major news outlets are just as guilty as each other. Isn't it great when the Fourth Estate take their role in society seriously? Ha! Yeah, that was sarcasm. First up, we have a flat-out piece of defamation from news.com.au entitled "The New Extremist Threat in Australia, Right-Wing Groups Who Have ASIO's Attention." Right off the bat, they want you to associate these people with the worst kinds of terrorism because who needs a valid argument when you have hyperbole and false equivalence? They follow the headline with a clear-cut case of defamation that likely warrants a lawsuit, and I quote, "Right-wing extremists are planning a Cronulla-style race riot this weekend to protest immigration, and national intelligence agencies are watching." Let's hear what the organiser of the rally, Neil Erickson, actually said when announcing it.
This Saturday, 1 p.m, get down to St Kilda Beach. This is a peaceful political assembly. No violence. Don't give it to the media. Don't give them what they want. Don't give them what they seek.
I wonder if Fake News Limited will issue a retraction given their claim is flat out false. Either way, in the description of this video will be a link to each article as well as a link to the Australian Press Council's complaints page. I'm sure they'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let them know. The article continues. Right-wing groups promising to unleash a Cronulla-style race riot on Melbourne this weekend are on the National Intelligence Agency's radar, with growing fears of the threat posed by a new breed of homegrown extremists. Here is a deliberate attempt to paint working-class Aussies as equivalent to terrorists. After all, homegrown extremists is exactly what this same news outlet calls Islamic terrorists. But I digress. Neil Erickson, a controversial far-right figure who has been convicted for inciting serious contempt against Muslims, is behind the rally, which police say they are watching closely. I don't know about you, but I don't consider inciting serious contempt of a religious belief to be a crime. Much the same as inciting ridicule is not a real crime. In fact, it's only the far-left ruling establishment who claim otherwise in a clear attempt at shutting down freedom of speech and dissent. Back to the article. Neil Erickson is supported by convicted criminal Blair Cottrell, who runs the United Patriots Front and an underground fight club for men, and once called for a picture of Adolf Hitler to be hung in every Australian classroom. In this excessively long sentence, there are no less than 4 lies. Firstly, he no longer runs the United Patriots Front. This is an inactive organisation and has been for years. This must be what real journalism looks like. Secondly, he runs no underground fight club for men. They are referring here, of course, to Lad Society. I recently interviewed the man who actually does run Lads. There you will see the third lie exposed, that Lad Society is a fight club. It's actually a community group for European men, and there's little underground about it. They are very public about their goals and their organisational beliefs. The last lie is that he called for a picture of Adolf Hitler to be hung in every Australian classroom. This is a lie that has been repeatedly called out by Blair himself. In fact, it was a fake account, and Blair never said that, but let's not let the truth get in the way of a clear political agenda. The article continues, but we need to move on. Next up, we have good old Fairfax Media, and I quote, "Police out in force for angry clashes in far-right rally in St Kilda." I dare you to say that 10 times quickly. This headline is interesting in that the syntax is at the level of an early high school student. Notice the picture of the man doing the Roman salute with his hand over his mouth. I guess by the logic of Fairfax Media, Basil Fawlty is also a National Socialist. The authors write, hundreds of police occupied the St Kilda foreshore to maintain the peace as close to 100 far-right activists clashed with 200 anti-racism protesters throughout the afternoon on Saturday. Notice the use of the term far-right compared with anti-racism protesters, because nothing spells anti-racism quite like marching under the banner of communism. You will notice this method of gaslighting used frequently by the fake news media. Here is an accurate description of the event. After a political rally of 500 Australian Patriots, roughly 200 remained, with a few additions, to mock about 150 far-left communist losers. Police kept them separate throughout the afternoon. The Age even got a statement from the Mayor of St Kilda, appropriately named Dick Gross. Below they show a picture of a man with his arms raised, and I quote, "There is no moral ambiguity. There is not a moral equivalence between the people who turned up today. The far right's views are repugnant. They nauseatingly drape themselves in our nation's flag to try and gain legitimacy, and I condemn their views and their behaviour." He's right about one thing. There is no moral ambiguity or moral equivalence. One group is standing up for their right to speak while living in a safe and peaceful nation. The other want to destroy that nation and implement the world's most deadly ideology ever, communism. There is indeed no comparison. The truth is, old Mr. Grossdick most likely doesn't like his country that much. He can condemn all he likes because nobody cares what a low IQ traitor thinks. As for that picture, here is a comment on one of my videos from a patriot called Spud Vicious, and I quote, "Hello, my wife and I were in the area today and decided to hang around and have a look and listen for a while. Just wanted to say that I was standing right behind the bloke in the red polo shirt that had his picture taken, and it was used on the news website claiming that he was giving a Nazi salute. He was not doing anything of the sort. He was actually saying things like snowflakes and just yelling go home. He was using his hand to wave them away, and the picture the media used was a still photo so it looked like a salute. Media lies again. Well, well, well. Fake news media caught out lying again. I really do think it's time for a class action defamation suit." The media and political establishment also decided to pile on Australian Senator Fraser Anning for daring to stand with Australian nationalists. From the Herald Sun. Fraser Anning slammed for attending St Kilda far-right rally. Labor leader Bill Shorten has joined Prime Minister Scott Morrison in condemning the far-right extremists who participated in a wild rally in St Kilda on Saturday. If there's one thing that's certain in politics, it's that if you have bipartisan support, you can be sure both parties are screwing you equally. Of course, our dear leaders condemn the Patriots while ignoring the actual communists who turned up to protest simply because their feelings were hurt. Opposition lead globalist bullshittin gets the first word, and I quote, "In the corrosive and fragmented climate of public debate, it's become unfortunately common for some to seek out attention by picking on minorities, the less powerful, by attacking in the most vile terms, normally someone who can't defend themselves." You mean like picking on 500 working class Australians with no power by calling them far right and comparing them to neo-Nazis in every major news outlet in the country? He continues, "Here, around the world, right-wing extremists are turning this into a political art form. Australia won't achieve any what our nation's great destiny can be by pulling the racist lever. I want to know, would soon-to-be socialist disaster bullshittin have anything to say about these people if they weren't white?" Ha! Yeah, that's a trick question. Of course he wouldn't. And the only reason this was even an issue is because white working class people dared to stand up for themselves. The racist rulers always lie, and they always project. The PM was no better, going hard on the globalist talking points. And I quote, "Intolerance does not make Australia stronger. Australia is the most successful migrant country in the world. This has been achieved by showing respect for each other, our laws and values, and maintaining sensible immigration policies. Let's keep it that way. it makes Australia stronger. The problem for little Scotty is that intolerance does actually make a society stronger, and Australia's success in immigration came before the 1960s, when we still had the constitutionally mandated White Australia policy, a policy the ruling class scrapped without the required referendum. Since then, it's been one disaster after another. If he thinks letting in hundreds of thousands of people from non-compatible cultures is sensible, then I guess he'll now keep his home unlocked at night, and for all time. After all, letting anyone and everyone in is sensible, as he says. As for showing respect, I wonder, when is he going to show respect for the Australian people and listen to their legitimate grievances? I guess respect is only for slaves. The rest of the article is much the same. It gets a quote from the chairman of the Anti-Defamation Commission, a Jewish organisation, and quotes from two other MPs. One from Communist Senator Sarah Hanson-Young, who says,
"The government should refuse to take Fraser Anning's vote in the Senate after he has shown again he is unfit to be in Parliament, hanging out and supporting with neo-Nazi who are inciting violence is inexcusable."
The other from Socialist MP Tim Watts, who says,
"Today, around 100 neo-Nazis, white nationalists and racial supremacists rallied in St Kilda, accompanied by an Australian senator. We should take these racists and fascists seriously, etc., etc."
This article is a classic case of gaslighting. It presents the picture that there is no other side to the argument, that the rally was unquestioningly evil, and anyone involved with it is evil by default. Finally, I want to present their ABC, Australia's taxpayer-funded media outlet required by law to remain balanced and present all sides of the story. And I quote, "Fraser Anning defends decision to attend far-right protests in Melbourne. Controversial Queensland Senator Fraser Anning has stood by his decision to attend a far-right protest in Melbourne on the weekend at taxpayers' expense. The rally, organised by the United Patriots Front, has been widely condemned by all political parties, with some attendees making Nazi salutes and wearing Nazi insignia. Apparently, members of the Australian Parliament using taxpayer money to attend a peaceful political rally is just not acceptable. This is clearly a lot worse than communist Sarah Hanson-Young using taxpayer funds to go whale watching. But I digress. Their ABC want to make it clear to you everyone is against the rally, so you better not support it. The article is a concerted effort to remind you that Senator Anning is an unworthy member of Parliament. And I quote, "At the last election, he collected just 19 preference votes and conceded he has not a lot of chance of being re-elected to his $200,000 a year position." He was also kicked out of Katter's Australia Party, which said his views were too extreme. Deputy Leader Tanya Plibersek described the protest as disgusting. "It's an ugly rally. Its motivation is an ugly effort to divide Australians rather than bring us together," she said. She must not have heard Blair's speech. "I would never vote for him. I hope others will reconsider their support for him in the future." First, they point out that he got few first preference votes, an irrelevant factoid because clearly he got enough preferences to win a seat. They accompany this by mentioning his salary, just so you know he's getting paid for what he does, I guess. They remind you Katter's Australia Party kicked him out, while mentioning only their side of the story and not Fraser Anning's. The truth is Bob Katter betrayed Fraser Anning. He really sold him out. Finally, they get a quote from a socialist politician who wasn't at the rally and has little to add other than hyperbole and slander. These are by no means the only examples of blatant far-left bias from our fourth estate. Even the so-called conservative newspaper The Australian portrayed themselves as little more than controlled opposition. As I mentioned, if I was to go over them all, this video would take far too long. So what did actually happen at the rally? It's quite simple actually. 500 Australian men and women turned up to protest mass migration, the crime third world migration brings, government corruption and media lies. Several people articulated their grievances, including a Vietnamese man. Then In less than an hour, most people dispersed. Trouble only started because about 150 far-left NPCs, proudly marching under a communist flag mind you, showed up to vent their anger that someone might dare have an opinion they don't like. In doing so, they closed the streets and required a major police presence to keep the two groups apart. They were even joined by a convicted murderer. Had these communists not turned up, the rally would have ended in less than an hour and everyone would have gone home without incident. There were no Roman salutes, there were no neo-Nazis, it wasn't left or right, it was a group of fed-up Australians sick of a corrupt ruling class destroying their home without their consent. The hand gestures, presented by the media as the worst crime in Australian history, for the most part were either in jest or not Roman salutes at all. Although there may have been one or two National Socialists yelling at communists, there were actually none at the main rally itself, as far as I could tell. The media reported none of this because the people who own the media are globalists. They don't want you to know the truth, because the truth would make you angry, and when you get angry, you'll rise up and tell them to stop. The truth is, the speeches at the rally were accurate, well articulated, and highlighted very real problems, as well as genuine threats to our people and our nation. You can watch my full vlog to find out exactly what happened and see for yourself. Link in the description for your convenience. As for the media, I suggest they read their own comments sections. Aside from a small minority of left-wing trolls and far-left fail-fax media, of course, the people overwhelmingly support the Patriots and Fraser Anning. Not only that, many people are aware of the media's bias and the lies they tell. Channel 9 even did a poll asking the people if they wanted Anning ousted from Parliament, and after 35,000 votes, the response was an overwhelming 80% no. What's clear is that the people are slowly waking up to the propaganda and are fed up. It is only a matter of time before this breaks into flat-out defiance. The tide has well and truly turned. The globalist ruling class might still have their hands on power, but this is unlikely to last much longer. They know this, which is why they are going so hard on the lies and the gaslighting. The main weapon of the ruling class is lies and defamation. The best antidote to lies is the God's honest truth. It is now more important than ever that we continue to tell the truth as loudly and as often as possible. I hope you enjoyed the video, share the truth around, and I'll see ya when I see ya.
Thanks very much for coming, I really appreciate it.